Good afternoon and hello, everyone. My name is Rich Longo, and I'll be your host. Thank you for joining us for another webinar. Today's webinar is BMC Client Management Tips and Tricks, presented by none other than Kyle Hamilton of Flycast Partners. We took the biggest challenges that you presented to us on your sign-up forms, and from there, Kyle has composed a list of tips and tricks based on what you were looking for. Kyle is a software engineer for Flycast Partners with well over 25 years of experience in the IT service management space. His career started as a network engineer for Pro Systems and was quickly hired by Network Associates as a professional services consultant, where he delivered ITSM solutions around the world for thousands of customers. Kyle's primary focus is on ITIL processes and architecture. He has extensive knowledge of CMDB and asset management projects and also deals with automation and management solutions such as BMC Client Management and BMC Discovery. Kyle has been a certified consultant for Front Range, Peregrine Software, BMC Remedy Force, Service Desk Express, BMC Discovery, BMC Client Manager, as well as being ITIL certified in Microsoft MCSE and many other certifications. Before we get the show started, Kyle, let me introduce our organization.
Raymarc is highly repeatable, best practice IT system management and service delivery. We strive to satisfy the ever-increasing demand to cut cost, increase efficiencies, and align ourselves with the goals of your business. BMC Service Desk Express is sunsetting at the end of 2017, and support will no longer be available. If you have SDE, contact us at 844-FLYCAST, that's 844-359-2278, and we can successfully migrate you to another solution that best fits your business's needs.
So once again, I want to remind you that we did take the biggest challenges that you gave to us in your signups today, and Kyle will try to get to as many of those as he possibly can within the allocated time. We do have a full house today. We are going to have a full webinar today and still have people joining us, but we're going to get started right now. Kyle, I turn this over to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Rich. Just real quickly, am I coming through okay? Can you hear me?
You sound perfect, and your screen looks great.
Okay, fantastic. Well, good morning, afternoon, evening. I know we had registrants all the way from Lubbock to Lima, so I appreciate everybody's time. We're going to dive right in now that you know a little bit about Flycast and talk specifically about BMC Client Management. So, as Rich mentioned, I've compiled a list of topics from those provided and kind of laid out an overview. We'll go through and kind of address those and show you some of those tips and tricks and hopefully present some information both for those of you that are current customers of BMC Client Management as well as some of those that I saw registered that are looking for a client automation or client management solution. So with that, let me get started with the first topic. And again, this goes both for current customers as well as customers looking at a solution. I want to talk about what you see down in the lower right-hand corner of the screen. One of the nice features of client management is its ease of use, ease of configurability. And a lot of that is accomplished by use of easy-to-use wizards that you'll see listed. So all the common tasks that you typically have to tackle in terms of client management, everything from creating reports to creating patch distributions, software distributions, etc., can be easily accessed via a wizard-driven interface. So as you'll see over on the left-hand side, there's quite a large menu of options and items that are available in client management, and sometimes, depending upon the complexity of the task, it requires you to navigate between different options to get information and populate information for that particular task. So by use of the wizards, which I recommend for everybody, it'll walk you through page by page and allow you to easily configure an asset discovery, for example, without having to spend a lot of time in the documentation or spend a lot of time going through training. In that regard, I'm going to talk first about discovery. Having shown the Discovery Wizard, because one of the tips and tricks I want to mention is not to forget the fact that client management offers both agentless and agent-based discovery. And a lot of times customers will run an initial agentless discovery on the network, deploy the agents out to the devices, and then begin to use the agents to do discovery from that point forward. And they kind of forget to go back to the agentless, which is important because in most environments, the network is constantly being updated and in many cases growing and changing rapidly. And the agentless discovery is important because this is the component in client management that provides you with that master list, all the devices that are on the network, not just those devices that you have agents installed on, and all of the devices outside of those that you can install agents on, things like Cisco switches or routers or voice over IP phones, network printers, other devices that you also need to know about and want to discover and get information on. But because there's no agent for those devices, this is your primary interface and way to find out about those. So the first tip and trick is to understand that there are both flavors and they're both critically important to the environment. Because if you're not going back on a periodic basis and making sure that you are updating the agentless discovery to capture new subnets and new parts of the network that get added, then you're potentially missing all of those devices on those new parts of the network. So the agentless discovery feature is critical in making sure that you know about everything that's out there, not just the devices that you've deployed the agents to. Now, one of the features of the discovery is the ability to deploy relays throughout the environment to assist in not only the discovery process, but also in the deployment of software applications, of patches, and any material that you need to distribute to the workstations, the desktops, and laptops that you're managing. The relays are important for a couple of reasons. Number one, it essentially converts your WAN traffic to LAN traffic so that you're not trying to manage all of your devices from a single master or single point within the network. I've brought up a topology view that will kind of illustrate this and show you what I mean. In my demo environment here, you'll see I have a master client management server, but then I've also designated relay points at a couple different locations. And what these relay points allow me to do is to be able to see location information on top of what's out there, but where is it located in space? And where is it located in your network? So these could be offshoot offices, regional offices, where you might have, a dozen users, 50 users or more, and you want to have the ability to service those users locally rather than having a single master server and kind of a hub and spoke diagram here where everything is just feeding into one point. That way, if you're deploying software or you're deploying an operating system, you're not having to do that from that master server. You can leverage those relay points to assist you in getting that software, getting those patches out to those users that exist in those remote sites and remote offices, as well as giving you the ability to pull up this topology view and actually see where those devices are reporting into. And there are multiple views that are available, so you can view this from a network perspective and see what's on the different subnets as your network grows and expands, being able to understand which devices are located on which parts of the network. It's critically important. Now, another tip and trick I want to mention is it's important to note that client management integrates into a couple of different tools I want to talk about real quickly. The first one being Active Directory. And a lot of customers overlook this point or simply never understand that it's available. And one of the reasons that it becomes important is for the automatic population of devices and or users from the directory so that within client management, you have access to all of the users that are already out there and existing that you're managing today, and whether it's AD or some other open LDAP, whatever the case may be. You can come into client management and create these user groups and create these device groups manually, but of course there's time and effort involved in doing so. By leveraging the out-of-the-box interface or integration to Active Directory, you're able to synchronize those users and synchronize those device groups so that you avoid all of that manual creation and that manual population. This becomes important not only just for pulling the data in, of course, but throughout the tool, whether you're deploying patches or deploying software or deploying an operating system. In many cases, customers want to be able to target machines specifically, and by having a connection to Active Directory, it allows you to leverage all of the structure that you've already built out within Active Directory. So when it comes time to deploy a piece of software, for example, rather than having to pick from a list of IP addresses or pick through a list of usernames, I can come in here and actually browse the directory and perhaps select to deploy a piece of software to a particular department, like the engineering team or the marketing team or the sales team. So without having to specifically identify a list of machines, I can simply use those containers and those organizational units that exist in the directory. And the more built out, the more information you have in that Active Directory structure, the more information and the more capability you have inside of client management to be able to target those devices specifically, whether it's based on department, whether it's based on operating system type or any other type of breakdown you have in the directory. That'll allow you to then say, I want to deploy these patches to all of the Windows machines, or I want to deploy these patches only to my Windows 7 devices, for example, and be able to target those containers and target those organizational units when it comes time to actually deploy. The other integration that I wanted to mention, and again, this is something that's out of the box with client management and critically important in terms of automating and driving efficiency into the environment, is the integration into your service desk application. Now, there's built-in interfaces for both BMC footprints as well as BMC Remedy Force, but client management can also be integrated into other service desk tools, whether it be Trackit or Landesk, you name it. You can easily create an interface, both for the purpose of taking all of this information that you're capturing in terms of discovery and all of the inventory information and making it or populating it into the service desk CMDB so that it avoids the manual process or manual creation of that information. But it also enables you, number one, it gets rid of another siloed application so that client management's not just another tool sitting out there by itself doing desktop management and desktop automation, but provides added functionality and added benefit in that by integrating into the service desk directly, it'll allow you to take events and alarms and alerts and things like that that you're interested in capturing, things like errors, for example, or you exceed a license count for a particular application, or in terms of discovery, we've got a new device that's on the network, or we've lost connectivity or lost contact with the device for a period of time. Rather than that just being an alarm and alert that sits here inside of client management that you can view and respond to, this will allow you to create incidents or create a ticket directly within the service desk based on these alarms and events. And again, this becomes critical in helping you to automate the response to those events so that when you have if you're using that agentless discovery, you have a new device that pops up on the network, it can become an incident then that gets assigned to a group or assigned to a user in the service desk so that they can follow up and respond, and you've got something documented and an audit trail that can be used to report on and follow up on. And you'll see that those alarms and events can be configured by the administrator to include virtually anything, whether it's based on software licensing, whether it's based on a compliance violation, somebody doesn't have a particular configuration that they should have, or they are running a piece of software that they shouldn't. This will enable you to take that information and drive that directly into the service desk so that you have an easy way to respond to that within the service desk rather than having, again, to refer back to two different tools to deal with one particular situation. So it's important to note that integration is out of the box and available to be able to leverage that for those types of events. Now, I mentioned compliance in terms of violations, in terms of warning. One thing that's important to note with client management is the compliance management module, which enables you to essentially configure rules for your environment that will allow you to evaluate your device's stance. Do they have antivirus installed like they should? Is antivirus up to date and running as it should be? Do they have their firewall turned on? All of those key configurations that you want to make sure that you have standardized throughout the environment, you can build those rules directly into client management. So it gives you this kind of global dashboard view, and you can see how you stand with antivirus installation, for example. Who has antivirus installed, who doesn't, so that you know what kind of problem you have to address and on which devices that you need to address it on. Now, it's not only visible and available here within the dashboard in compliance management, but also within reporting. Because I know we had some questions about different types of reports and being able to get the information out of the tool, and that's critical for any application. So for both compliance, for example, and with compliance, I'll mention specifically SCAP, because again, this is a little tip and trick that not many people are, as of today, are familiar with, I should say, is SCAP is a moniker for Security Content Automation Protocol. Essentially what that means is there is a library of pre-built compliance policies, compliance rules that are out there and available on the internet. These are driven by the National Institute for Standards and Technology, NIST. This is currently being rolled out globally through the Department of Defense and will soon be filtering down. It already is, but within the next couple of years was going to become the new standard in terms of compliance and policy, even in the private sector. What this allows you to do, and I'll pull up a particular report here, is allows you to leverage pre-built content that's available on the internet today, rather than you having to go through and define and create those rules that you want to evaluate. You can go to the internet, and there's multiple sites where you can find this if you simply Google SCAP, that you can download this content directly into client management and have a pre-built library of compliance rules that you can use to evaluate your machine's stance. So you'll see here, and these are quite comprehensive. The one I've got pulled up in this particular example is specifically centered around Internet Explorer 8. So it's essentially, how should Internet Explorer 8 be configured in an environment if you want it to be set up in a secure and effective manner. And you'll see as I scroll down through here, it shows me at the top, how many of my devices are compliant or non-compliant, and then down below you'll actually see all of the different rules that are contained in that package that are being evaluated. And as you'll see, it's quite comprehensive to be able to see, within the browser, is the browser set to allow scriptlets to run? Is the browser set to accept third-party extensions, things like that, so that you can easily download this content and immediately start running these SCAP compliance rules against your environment to see where you have potential security holes and or problems. So again, you know what to address, but you don't have to go through, and in this case, just for Internet Explorer 8, you can see create 109 different policy rules. It shows you at the top kind of a summary again, and as you scroll down in the report, it'll actually show you for each rule more of a detailed description of exactly what that rule is looking at or looking for, and which devices have failed that particular policy. So again, you know exactly what to address. So the SCAP content is critical for customers that are really looking to make sure that their workstations, their desktops, laptops, servers, et cetera, are configured in a manner in which they're secure and the way they want them to be. And it's important to note that these policies, the SCAP packages, are available not only for Internet Explorer 8, but they cover a wide variety from, you can see here's one for how should a Windows 2008 server domain controller be configured. There's SCAP policies for Windows 7, Windows 10, Windows 8, you name it. So depending upon your environment, you're going to find a host of content already prepackaged out there ready to go, and you can simply download those SCAP policies into your client management console and immediately begin running those to determine your environment stance. Now, the next topic or tip or trick I want to mention relates specifically to upgrades. And I mentioned upgrades because I know there's a couple of customers that I saw, or several customers I saw that were registered to attend today that are on prior or older versions of client management. And it's important to note that BMC is constantly updating client management. The version we're looking at today is version 12.5, which is about 3 months old, I'd say, maybe 4. And they're probably about another 3 to 4 months away from the next release, whether that be 12.6 or 13.0 is unknown at this point. But it's important to make sure that you keep up and are aware of these updates as they come out, because there's valuable content being added, not just bug fixes and minor fixes and things like that, but new content like mobile device management, which a lot of customers, both current and new, don't even know exist today. With the 12.5 release, BMC added mobile device management to enable you not only to discover your desktops and laptops and all the other devices that we looked at before, but also to be able to discover your iPads, your Android devices, your Windows Mobile, Windows phones, everything that's popping up on the network, from the switches all the way to the handheld devices that somebody may be walking in, to the office with from home, for example. With this new release, it enables you not only to discover those devices, but as of today, for the iOS devices, you can then also create security profiles and manage the mobile devices just like you can manage your client devices and maybe doing today. This will allow you, as you can see, a host of control over the mobile devices to be able to restrict things like the passcode and PIN settings, which networks are they automatically or can they connect to, mail settings, things like that, as well as restrictions for the device. Will allow the users to utilize the camera. Can they access iTunes while they're connected to the network? You can see, can they open up browser in the Safari on the mobile device? Essentially, everything that Apple will allow you to manage on an iOS device can be managed now using client management and the MDM tool, all the way down to whitelisting and blacklisting applications you want them to be able to utilize on those mobile devices. So there may be certain things you want them to have those automatically added and placed on their device. You might have certain applications you don't want used within the network, like Facebook, for example, so that as long as those devices are in your environment and connected to your network, you have the ability to lock those devices down and configure them in a secure way so that they're able to operate and function and get what they need to have, but without having undue access or having capabilities that you don't want them to have. So again, important to make sure that you are up to date and are aware of those new updates coming out, because there is important functionality being added with each release. That next release I mentioned coming up is going to expand that management capability I just mentioned to also include Android devices as well as iOS devices. So keep an eye out for that next update, which should be out soon. Another topic I wanted to mention is a lot of customers talk about, when you talk about managing software, they talk specifically about managing software licensing, and they want to track software licensing in the environment. And of course, that's available and something you can easily do with client management, to be able to go in, and set up software license management, so you can easily pull up the similar dashboard that we saw with say compliance, to be able to see how many licenses of a particular application do I have, how many are installed, how many are available, and also be able to track usage information. So again, you can easily do that, but there's also the ability to manage those applications beyond just simply counting licenses. Things like maybe prohibiting an application from running on a device, or protecting an application, essentially self-healing an application, so that if a user was to misconfigure or delete a critical file, for example, that client management agent on that device can automatically reinstall that file and always have that application in a running state, rather than leaving them hobbled and then forcing a call to the service desk. So as an example, I'm going to come back up here to a particular device, and we're going to remote control into this particular device here. And I'll show you an example of what I mean. In this particular case, I've created a prohibited application. So there's a certain application, in this case Notepad, just for example purposes, that I don't want users running. And it's also critical to know, a little tip and trick, this can be done during specific times of the day. So I may allow a use of a particular application outside of business hours, before 8 a.m. or after 5 or 6 p.m. in the afternoon, but deny it or prohibit it during those business hours. So that's an additional capability. But what that'll allow you to do is, again, not only track licensing, but you'll see if the user goes to execute one of those prohibited applications, the client management agent can immediately shut that down, and not only shut it down, but you have the ability to configure this little message box that you see here. So that's you see an out-of-the-box version, but that could be configured and customized to read, whatever text you want them to have, or what you want them to see, so that you can not only shut those applications down, but again, going back to the integration into the service desk and those alarms and alerts, that can also be an alarm that gets triggered off to let the administrator know that somebody's attempted to run, or perhaps just by mere fact that they've attempted to run it, that they've got a piece of software installed on their device that maybe you don't want running. So the ability to not only track licensing for applications, but the ability to actually monitor and prohibit those applications from running on a desktop can be critical for a lot of environments. While I'm here on this particular device, I'll talk about the next topic. Again, something that not a lot of even current customers that I talk to are aware of is a feature called My Apps. You'll see down here in the little system tray that the client management agent, this little yellow shield or kind of orange shield, is running. And if you make that available and visible to your users, it provides them with the ability to access what's called the My Apps screen, or the My Apps window. This is nice because in a lot of cases you may have software applications that you want to make available to your customers, but you don't necessarily want or even need to push it out to everybody, by default. So in this way, you can present them with an interface that they can access for themselves directly, that can provide all of that pre-packaged and pre-built software, so that if they need Adobe Acrobat Pro, or they need Google Chrome or another piece of software, they can install that for themselves. You're not having to log in to client management and schedule things and push buttons to deploy things, but just simply advertising it to the user via the My Apps window, so that if it's software that they determine they need or they want to have on their device, they can, simply by coming and clicking on it here and getting it installed. You can also create and leverage your operational rules or scripted actions within client management to allow them to execute those actions or run those actions on their device outside of the simple installation of software, for example. So they need to connect to the VPN, or they need to clear their temp drive, or they need to defrag the hard drive. again, rather than relying or requiring the user to know and understand how to do that for themselves, you can provide those actions and those activities through the My Apps window and simply allow them to click and execute those for themselves. So a lot of functionality can be driven directly through the agent, not something that you have to, again, pull levers and push buttons to do, but simply make it available to the user so if they want it, they can access this window on their device at any time and pull it down or execute that action for themselves, and again, avoid the manual need for an administrator or somebody working as a, client management admin to have to log in and take care or push that button for themselves. Now, since I've remote controlled into this device, I want to talk about the next topic that not a lot of users utilize that I talk to, which is what's referred to as direct actions. So you can see we have the ability to remote control and view the screen, transfer files, do whatever I need to do through the remote control window. But in many cases, users, they might be remote, they might be over slow wide area links or slow connections, they may be over the internet. There's another important feature of those relays that I mentioned early on is not only to allow you to assist in distributing software and collecting inventory, but also to allow you to provide service to users anywhere they're located. So with client management, if you configure the relays appropriately and deploy those relays in the best practices manner, it doesn't matter where this device sits. As a matter of fact, this particular device that I'm remoted into right now is sitting in an Amazon data center. I don't know where. I'm sitting in an office in Dallas, Texas. So all it has to have is the agent installed and a connection to the internet. They don't have to be on a VPN. They don't have to come into the office. So in that way, I can remote control into a device like this. I can push software, I can collect inventory, I can run those SCAP compliance rules against those devices, whether they're in a hotel lobby, an airport terminal, or sitting on the couch at home. And in a lot of environments, that's important because you have mobile users that seldom, if ever, come into the office as road warriors, and you don't want to lose connectivity to them. You don't want to lose contact for a long period of time. And you might need to deploy software or service them at any point in time. So that goes back to the importance of those relays is not only to give you the other benefits, but to also to be able to manage those devices irregardless of their physical location. Now going back to the original topic I was headed towards is remote control is great when you need to see the screen, but in many cases you simply need to be able to configure the device or reconfigure the device in some manner. So the direct actions or the direct access tools provide you with the ability to go into the device and manage it, say pull up a list of services running on the device, and be able to start or stop those running services or stopped services without having to open up a screen and pass all of that screen refresh information, which just eats up your bandwidth. So by using the direct access tools, rather than having to pass the screen info, it still allows me to come in here and view the services that may be running. I can start things up that are stopped. I can stop things that are started. So if users contact or call into the service desk and have a problem, you're able to look at the inventory, determine, or look at the configuration and figure out what the issue is. These direct access tools allow you to go in and remediate that without having to pass the screen information and perhaps without having to disturb or even make the user aware that you're in the background doing the work. And you'll see that extends all the way from running services. You can go in and make changes to the user's registry. So you might need to go in and create a registry key or create a new value. It provides you all the same management capability that remote control does, but it saves you all the time and effort of passing that screen refresh information. So I frequently remind customers or tell customers about the direct access tools because when you are dealing with somebody over the internet that's not sitting in their cubicle or in their office, plugged into the network, this tool becomes critical in enabling you to do things quickly and easily while saving you the time of having to wait to just pass screen information back and forth. All right. Now, another topic that was mentioned relates specifically to operating system deployments. There's several questions about deploying operating systems and specifically Windows 10. So a couple of points I wanted to mention in relation to OS deployment. Number one, as of 12.0, so with the 12.5 release we're looking at today, and again, for those customers that are running anything prior to 12.0, there is no support for Windows 10. Once you get to 12.0, I believe it's 12.0 Service Pack 1, actually, or 12.0 Service, or Hotfix 1, I think they call it, you have support for Windows 10. So it'll allow you to come in and create an OS deployment or a project for Windows 10 that you can deploy out to your workstations on top of all of the previous versions of Windows, of course. And on that particular topic, I'm also going to mention the fact that, and I'll tie this in just a moment so you'll see where I'm going here. You want to be aware that there is an active community site for client management. It's at communities.bmc.com. That community is active not only with other customers like yourselves that have questions about the product, have problems that they're looking to solve, but you also have BMC product management, BMC development, and a lot of skilled resources that spend a lot of time on that community site answering questions and creating content, whether it be video content or documentation, that addresses a lot of the topics, and specifically a lot of the topics that I saw listed for some of the registrants today around things like deploying and upgrading Windows 10. In this specific example, the community site, you'll find an article out there on actually using patch management to enable you to deploy Windows 10 versus having to create an operating system image. Essentially, being able to go out and grab the ISO file for Windows 10 and import it into patch management, since it's something that the Shavlik engine that we use for patch management, can't handle and doesn't address. You can simply go and download that ISO, import that into patch management, and actually deploy an update from, say, Windows 7 to Windows 10 as a patch, or service pack in client management terms, rather than having to go through and create an OS deployment image for that. And you'll find that document, and it's probably 2 or 3 pages in detail. It goes through all the specific steps on how to go, if you have the ISO file for Windows 10 that you're looking to deploy, how to import it, how to get it installed and set up in patch management, so that when you come into patch management, along with seeing patches that you need to deploy, you can actually see that Windows 10 update and be able to deploy that through patch management much easier than you could if you had to, for example, go through and try and build an OS image. The other topic I wanted to mention around OS deployment is a lot of times, again, customers ask the question about, those devices or users that are seldom in the office. And it's important to note that it is possible with client management to create offline installs of these operating system images, essentially bootable drives, typically a USB device or USB keys. And I've had many customers that have environments where they've had to take a USB key, throw it in a FedEx package, ship it to a user that's never connected in any form or fashion, maybe perhaps not even managed by client management. Right? They don't even have the agent installed, but you need to get them upgraded. You need to get an operating system image deployed. This will actually allow you through here for each image that you have to create an offline USB key. Again, you can throw in a FedEx package, ship it to your customer. All they need to do is put the USB key into the USB port on their device, boot up the machine, and the image, the drivers, and everything they need are available offline. So it doesn't require the agent to be installed, doesn't require any kind of connectivity. So you could deploy those, via the agent, creating those images in OS deployment, deploying them via patch, as I just kind of mentioned on the community site, or even creating offline installs for those users that are completely unmanaged or completely unreachable in those cases where you need to get an operating system pushed out. Another important tip and trick when you're talking about creating an image to deploy, whether it be Windows 7 or Windows 10 or anything else, is making sure that as you build those images, you're incorporating or including the client management agent as a part of that image. That way, as you install that image and that machine reboots, the client management is there and active running in that system tray so that any patches, any software, an entire software stack that needs to be deployed, all the patches that need to be deployed to that device can automatically be pulled down by the agent once that machine reboots. So as you're going through and building images to deploy, it's important to remember, to make sure to have that client management agent installed as a part of each image you're deploying. So the first time it reboots, you've got control over it. You start receiving the inventory and details on that device, and you have the ability to fully manage that device from the application stack all the way down in a very automated manner. Literally just booting up a device, walking away, coming back, 30 minutes, an hour later, and you got the operating system, it's fully patched, and they've got all the applications they need, and all you had to do is reboot the device. Another topic that I wanted to get to is, let's see here. When talking about patch management, I mentioned patch a while ago, and I wanted to come back to this because I wanted to mention Instant Expert. I talked about the wizards, and there were many questions about patching, making sure that, and desktops and laptops were patched and maintained. And again, you have the ability to kick off a wizard to walk through that, patch creation process. But it's important to note, I'll go back here to my home page, that you can also switch to what's called the Instant Expert. So that if I want to automate patch management, for example, rather than walking through a wizard, you'll see it opens up a series of screens that I can walk through. And it actually provides an explanation of the patch management process, all the different components and how it works. And again, what you'll see is it's actually walking me or navigating me through the menuing system on the left and allowing me just to click next, next, next through these screens, explaining on each screen what we're looking at and if you're having to make selections, what those are. And then actually providing the ability if you need to kick something off. In this case, I want to automate a new set of patches, for example, being able to kick off that wizard so that I can start walking through here, and you'll see not only does it open up the wizard, but it gives me a description of what it is I'm being asked for and what kind of detail I need to provide. Now, one of the reasons I wanted to use this example to kind of talk about Instant Expert is, there's a lot of questions not only about patching Windows tools, but patching all kinds of products. And it's important to note with client management that, again, we use the Shablik engine, but you'll notice that client management has the capacity to patch not only Windows applications, but a host of other applications that customers frequently need to address. Things from Adobe to Apple products to Citrix to BlackBerry to Sun Java, which is something that's notorious for creating security holes and gaps in the network. So important to note that with Client Manager, you're not only limited to being able to patch a Windows environment and Windows applications, but you're able to patch a wide variety of applications, far outside of the Windows environment, and do so in an automated manner, just by simply walking through the wizard that we're looking at here, following the simple instructions, and by creating these patch jobs. You can see I could come in here and simply define what patches I'm interested in, which applications I want to patch, on what schedule I want them patched, and then of course which devices I want to patch. And this kind of goes back to my original point of being able then to say, oh, I want to patch, a particular group or team. I want to patch the engineering department. I want to patch tech support and sales, for example. So rather than having to go through and specify a bunch of devices, I can leverage that Active Directory content and now create a set of automated patches to make sure that engineering, sales, and tech support are constantly up to date and secure for all the applications that I've defined that patch for. Now, I know we are right at the top of our time, so with that, I will wrap up and leave you with one thing, and that's I wanted to let everybody know that everything we've looked at here over the last 35, 40 minutes is actively online. This is a demo system that users can actually, and potential customers can access and try out. So if you want to kick the tires further, you want to dig a little deeper, maybe get some specific questions answered, please feel free to reach out to us at Flycast. We can provide you with the information on how to access this environment for yourself, as well as potentially setting up a one-on-one. So if you have more detailed questions, more specifics, we can get in touch with you and help you get those answered, whether you're going through and playing with the trial or whether you just have some questions you'd like to address specifically. So with that, I say thanks, and Rich, I'll turn it back to you for any closing comments.
Folks, I see we have at least 6 questions already. If you can simply call us with those questions that you have, reach out to us at 844-FLYCAST or reach out info@flycastpartners.com. We'll be more than happy to go ahead and get those answers for you. Give us 5 business days for any emailed question, or if you call us on the phone, you'll most likely get your question answered immediately. So by all means, we encourage you to reach out to us directly. We'd like to give you the answers that you're looking for. And I want to take the time to thank each and every one of you for taking time out of your busy day to join us for today's Tips and Tricks webinar. And Kyle, I want to thank you for an awesome presentation, especially covering the bits and pieces of 12.5. That was beneficial to the majority of our audience, I'm sure. With that being said, I'm going to wish everybody a great weekend.